Most people know that Collin County has been growing and growing rapidly, but I found that some do not realize how long it's been growing and how long it's been growing so fast. Some do not realize it, and there are even those that don't believe that it's going to be sustained into the future. So today I want to paint a picture of the county as I see it. In order to do this, I'm going to spend a minute on a little bit of history, and then I'll talk about today, including our bond programs, and then give you an idea of what I see as the future. The 4 core counties of the Metroplex have been growing tremendously over the last 50 years. So you may or may not be able to see it. The year on the far left is 1970, and the reason for putting this chart together was after any number of public meetings where we ran into people, as I said, who really don't have a feel for growth. And we realized we've really got to get people to understand what's going on in order for them to be supportive of the additional projects and funding that's needed. So you can see that all 4 core counties have had consistent, substantial growth over those 50 years, from 70 until now. And then it's interesting that you can see that Collin and Denton counties back in 70 were extremely small. I went to work for Collin County the first time in 1981, and it was 144,000 people, and we're over 1 million now. So while the Dallas and Tarrant County were already metropolitan areas back then, the Denton and Collin counties actually were transforming from small rural communities into the type of communities that we've got now. So there's been a transformation, and there's been a lot of consistent growth that has happened. It's not a splash in the pan. Another way to look at it is from the density standpoint. So you can look at at the area that the development covered in 2000 and what it was like in 2020. This kind of thing gives you a pretty stark graphic of just what the change is like. Putting something together like this on a decade basis is a really interesting way to look at it. The 1980 Commissioners Court started doing what it could to foresee and plan for growth. The county developed its first thoroughfare plan in 1982. The thoroughfare, or mobility plan as we call it now, has been regularly updated 4 times actually since 2000, as an example. In addition, planning is one thing, but providing what's needed to accommodate the growth is something else. That same Commissioners Court held the county's first transportation bond election in 1983. And again, bond programs have been used regularly ever since to provide the funding for mobility improvements that the county can afford. The bond programs through 2007 had a heavy emphasis on providing matching funds to cities for regional thoroughfares. But then in 2018, the court switched the priority to larger arterials, freeways. The court saw that there was a gap between what the cities were able to provide and build and what TxDOT was building, and decided to try and fill that gap. So that brings us to the 2018 bond program. That was a $750 million bond program 5 years ago. 600 million of that was allocated for freeways, and then lesser amounts for thoroughfares and some for parks and open space. And the parks and open space has been a part of the county's bond program since the beginning as well, and continues to be. So I'll quickly tell you the status of the projects in 2018, and then start talking a little bit about what we've got in the program that was just approved in November. We put the transportation projects in 3 categories: those that are managed by the county, those that are managed by TxDOT, and those that are managed by the cities. We provide regular updates, quarterly updates of the status of these on our website if you want to keep up with it, that kind of thing. By far the largest allocation is for the US 380 freeway through the middle of the county. Back in 2017, when TxDOT agreed to the request from the Collin County Commissioner's Court to develop a freeway from county line to county line along the US 380 corridor, the county knew that it would be a number of years before TxDOT was in a position to start buying right-of-way. And so the county provided funds to acquire land where necessary to prevent development from closing the corridor. So the large amount of funding was in the bond program in 2018 was for this purpose and for anything else that was needed to make the US 380 freeway move ahead. So now all of the segments of 380 have been cleared except for one. TxDOT is now acquiring right-of-way. They have a goal to start construction of some of the service roads by 2026. I can tell you that I've never seen TxDOT work on a project as aggressively as they have on this one. They're really moving forward. The other major project in the county is the Collin County Outer Loop. This is the freeway that's been on the county's plan since 2000. So far, it has been totally funded by Collin County. There's no state or federal funds in it. The facility is an unusual one because it's planned for a 500-foot width, which provides for a full freeway and then whatever regional transit might be needed at the time that it's appropriate. The facility is developed in stages. We start by building one of the service roads in two directions. When that's filled up, we'll build the other service road. When those are both filled with traffic, then we'll build the main lanes and the ramps. As of today, we have the first service road built from US 75 over to State Highway 121 between Melissa and Anna. It's been in for a number of years. And we have the first service road between the Dallas North Tollway and Custer over in the Salina area. We will start construction in just a few months on the next service road from Custer to US 75. In a few years, when that's done, then we'll have concrete from the Dallas North Tollway to past US 75 and over to State Highway 121. Thank you. In terms of thoroughfares, the county is managing a few and then providing funds to TxDOT in the cities for some others. A major project is the extension of Park Boulevard from Parker Road, FM 2514, just north of Wiley. It'll go across the north side of north of Wiley, actually north of the North Texas Municipal Water District water plant, and then tie into State Highway 78 on the east side of Wiley. That should go to bids over the next 3 or 4 months. We are in the latter stages of a mobility study in the east side of the county, trying to bring planning up to speed with the development that's begun to occur in the east side of the county. That study is going to result in a refined thoroughfare plan in that part of the county, a refinement of the travel demand model by reducing the traffic safety zones and so that it makes the modeling more accurate. And then a first step towards the feasibility of an additional freeway between Lavon Lake and the outer loop on the east side. Then another very significant roadway is what we're coming to call Myrick/McKillop. We've played around with the name for this for several years now because it joins so many different roadways, and you can see the heading that I've got up there is a little different from what I just said, but it is a roadway, a regional corridor that will connect the south end of the McKinney National Airport along south of Princeton to the east, and then back up to US 380 on the east side of Princeton. This will provide a parallel reliever to US 380 to try and provide some of the relief to the congestion that has really grown in that area over the last several years. The east half of the roadway is not on the TxDOT system, so the county has funded and developed the alignment study for that section of it on our own. That's been done and completed, and we're in the process now of starting to acquire right-of-way. The west half of it is actually more on a state facility. It's either on the existing alignment of FM 546 or it will be a relocation of FM 546. And it's complicated by the fact that it'll be tying in and be co-located with the new Spur 399 freeway around the south end of the airport, which is part of the overall 380 process. So we necessarily are working closely with TxDOT on this. We anticipate finishing the environmental assessment and alignment work in the middle of this year, and then TxDOT will start looking at right-of-way for it. A couple of other roadways that have come out of the funding in 2018 is the southbound service road of the Dallas North Tollway from Salina down to US 380. If you're familiar with that area, the northbound has been in for a number of years, and so we got the southbound to much like I described the process of development by stages of the outer loop is the way that we've done that, so that it can be set up for NTTA to provide the main lanes, which they are about to do. So some funding is also provided to assist the city of Salina and the town of Prosper for the conversion of Frontier, which is the major east-west thoroughfare that is between the two cities, to convert it from a two-lane rural and much used roadway to a four-lane divided. It spans from the Dallas North Tollway to Preston Road and has a bridge over the BNSF Railroad. This was completed last year. We have worked with TxDOT to provide some funding for a couple of projects that the county felt were high priority to us. The idea is to try and provide an incentive to TxDOT to see the priorities on some of these the way that we do. And so we've contributed $11 million for the conversion again of State Highway 121 out in the northeast part of the county that had become a tremendously dangerous roadway to a four-lane divided road, and it's set up to be 6 lanes eventually. The program also provided funding for assisting TxDOT to widen the US 380 from McKinney to the east past Princeton from the 4-lane divided that it is now to go to 6-lane divided, and they're getting close to starting that construction. So I mentioned the city managed projects. We actually put out a call for projects twice. I mentioned that the priority had switched and the amount of funding for the cities was more minority than it had been in the past, but there was funding provided, $60 million, and that money was distributed to 13 cities for various projects that they had submitted and proposed. We were also able to provide $30 million for Panther Creek Parkway development in the currently developing area of Frisco, and $30 million also for the extension of the runway of the McKinney National Airport. both of these were tied into the development of the US 380 or the Spur 399 freeways. So we have got to the point where we've either submitted or have spent or committed the funding from the 2018. One of the last things that we'll be doing with that large amount of money for US 380 is to provide the funding to the local cities to make the relocations of their water and sewer facilities. It turns out that the local government share of a project that is that big is beyond the capacity of the cities, even one as large as the city of McKinney. So a lot of that funding is going to be used to take care of that. So then we got to November bond election, and we just hit this real quick. We had to answer some questions to people as to why. It's because it says third fastest. We're one of the fastest growing counties in the country. The population has doubled since 2000. It's going to be doubling again over the next 30 years. We get 112 new residents every day. I showed you the chart a while ago of the history. So here is the projection into the future. This is going up to 2060. And blowing that up, you can see that the projections are that all of the four core counties will be over 2 million people at 2060. And this is pretty consistent with the projections that we've made that indicate that we'll be over 3 million people a little bit later than this. So this is going back to the way I started this, is the kind of thing that we've been trying to put out for the public so that they realize that the need, the projected growth is real. The bond program had 5 propositions. One of them was for what we call the justice side, which was for more courts, and enlargement of the jail, and additional facilities for juvenile detention. It's interesting that some people don't see it this way, but it's pretty easy to come to the conclusion that when you have as many people moving in as I've just described, then there are subsequent other parts of our society that grow right along with that. Unfortunately, some of it is negative, like jail cells and for adults and for juveniles, but that's the reality of it. So that is what the first proposition covered. We've also got an animal shelter that's a real good partnership among a lot of the cities, provides a real efficient way of handling the situation, and that has not been expanded since it was built, so that funding is there for that. The third proposition is for a new medical examiners facility. Again, when you bring a lot of people in, you also have a lot of people that die. So you've got a medical examiner that's got legal responsibilities, and facilities are necessary for all of that. The parks proposition provides funding to assist the counties with some parks, as well as make some improvements to the county's Myers Park and Event Center. And then the last was roads, and I'll spend a little bit more time on those. The road proposition was much more difficult this time than in the past. The revenue comes in a growing area like this without even raising the tax rate. So the planning board and the commissioner's court wanted to have a bond program that did not increase the tax rate. It used whatever that additional revenue could fund. And so there was a cap on it of basically $680 million. And It was also determined by the planning board that the building projects were absolutely necessary. Therefore, the emphasis was put on that, and $380 million was allocated or proposed to be allocated for the facilities. And so you end up with the money for transportation being what is left. So the amount of funding for transportation is 380 million compared to the 740 million 5 years ago. So the categories that what we basically have done so far is identify categories of the types of roadways that need improvement with the county. And there's one phase of it that is different than we've had in the past. There is more pressure on the roadways out in what we call out in the country, in the rural areas. We've got a lot more development going on in the rural areas, and they're beginning to put pressure on these rural roads that have been capable of handling several hundred cars a day, and now it's many thousand cars a day. So that is a category that we haven't spent much funding on in the past, but is necessary now. So that's something that's going to be in there. Another portion of it is another category is for regional thoroughfares, the outer loop, continuing to provide the right of way and funding for the outer loop, and then such things as the construction funding for the Myrick-McKillop project will be part of that. And then there'll hopefully that's a $200 million construction job. So hopefully we can get federal funding to help with that kind of thing. And then the court, I think, will anticipate providing some of the funding again for cities. So one of the major differences for those few of you out there that are consultants, this is going to result in more projects for the county to be able to put out. If any of y'all have visited with me, you know that my repeated response to everybody is we have a lot of expensive projects. We have expensive projects, but there's not very many of them. So I haven't been able to pass much around. That'll be a little bit different over the next 5 years. So I want to finish this real quick and tell me if I'm too far gone here. But I did want to hit. Okay. I want to leave a message that has become really apparent to us, and I want y'all to realize what's happening if you haven't seen it for yourself. And I'm calling it New Visions for the Future, one of which we have been working on, and one of which is something that hasn't been expected, and that's a change in the development pattern. This is coming from legislative changes over the last 3 sessions, over the last 6 years or so. The legislature has removed cities' authority to annex unilaterally. They've they have required what we lovingly call a shot clock, but basically it's a requirement that plats be approved within 30 days. And then the last thing they did this last session was to provide the ability for property owners to opt out of the extraterritorial jurisdiction of cities without the cities having any control over that. So this has got to the point where it's providing the inability to annex lessens the city's ability to manage growth, and especially from a density standpoint. The 30-day requirement would not be so bad if it didn't have a lot of restrictions about what else you couldn't put through for that in order to be able to make the review more meaningful. And the ETJ issue just switches a lot of the requirements for developments from the cities to the counties. Pass this one and come back to it in just a minute, real quick. As a result of all of this, we now have 40 municipal utility districts around the county. The labels that you see kind of obscure where they are, but they serve the purpose of showing you just how much of the county is covered now with municipal utility districts with MUDs that we didn't have 5 years ago. It's a complete different perspective. And the big issue is these are outside of cities. Cities have the legal authority to control density. Counties do not in Texas. We have very little in the way of statutory authority that gives us ability to manage density. So what is happening? All of these MUDs are much smaller lots, and they started several years ago. You can see there's enough of them built now for you to be able to drive around and see them, and then you can also see all the rest of them that are coming up out of the ground right now. And so the slide a while ago was basically saying that if you change lots from a 50-foot width to a 40-foot width, you're basically, theoretically at least, increasing the density by 50%. So if you're looking at, if you're looking at our projection of 3.4 million net build out, which is somewhere in the 2070s, you increase that by that factor and you're talking about 4.6 million. That's a lot of difference over that period of time. And you're talking about much smaller lots, much smaller houses, just a complete different complexion than what we've got today. So this is something that's interesting. I use this. This was a graphic that was used in our 2014 update for the county. It was kind of interesting. Friesen Nichols, I was with Jacobs at the time. Friesen Nichols was our sub in providing the demographic projections. And they brought this graphic to me that said, okay, we've broken things down into these areas. And so you can see the kind of populations that these cities are going to be in the future. And I told them, you're going to have to get those names of cities off of there because nobody is going to believe that Blue Ridge is ever going to have 400,000 people. And so we changed them to planning area A, B, and so forth. But I pulled this back up because it helps to describe the situation here. What we envisioned is that the future would have all of this 3.4 or whatever it is population being in cities, which is the way things had been before about 6 years ago. Basically, developments came in our area have traditionally begun on the edge of cities. They annex in, they go by the city standards, and they go on from there. So all of this population are going to be inside cities. There's nothing in those changes in the laws that is going to discourage growth. In fact, it's probably going to encourage it because the developers have been behind this to try and make it easier. So you're still going to have the population growth, probably going to be, as I've just said, going to be actually higher, but it's going to be outside of the cities. So the density is going to be higher because we don't have control over it. The standards are going to be different because we don't have the same standards and we don't have the statutory authority to have the same standards that the cities have. So where you see that it's in Blue Ridge, it's not going to be Blue Ridge in the future. So there's that kind of thing that's coming up, and it's something that I think it's important for y'all to see. Any of you that are familiar with MUDs know that they can provide a tax rate. They do provide a tax rate, and it's usually double what the tax rates are in the neighboring cities. So the people that are there are going to be paying higher taxes. And these are basically smaller homes, smaller economic backgrounds. So it's just going to be an interesting, different economic situation. And I'll pass over the other one, just talk about it in summary. The other vision is what we've all been dealing with over the last 5 years or so, emerging technologies or disruptive technologies. FHWA, of course, is doing their thing and researching and studying and what things are going to look like. But we're staring at the future of transportation being completely different than what it's been over the last 5 decades. So now we're going to have connected vehicles. If the connects. So that's a different ball game. Autonomous vehicles. We've already got electric vehicles, and the connection's messing up on the remote. So we'll have additional types of transit. J-Pod is one. Plano may be looking at this kind of thing in the Legacy West area. And then, of course, you're going to have the Hyperloop. You know, it's that thing that's similar to the bank pneumatic thing at your drive-in. So, but it's going to be people inside a capsule in a vacuum. Doesn't that sound interesting? When I say that to anybody that's not in our kind of business, they look at me like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm not going to get in anything like that. But this is going on. So it's a real deal. And of course, Uber and Bell have been, I'm waiting every day for them to have their first air taxi for a commercial basis. And which one of the cities is going to have the first terminal on top of one of their multi-story buildings in the county. But again, we're right there. So that's a part of the future. And then you look at the other part of it, things are just different, and they're going to be different in the future. I'm at the point where I'm going to retire one of these days. So y'all are going to have to deal with this. And I want to make sure those of you that don't have gray hair understand some of this and can get into it. So that's a little bit of story about Collin County. Hopefully it's something that some things that you didn't already know.